Okay. So we finished the like water for chocolate, and we will take the jazz. But today we'll not start reading it. I want to tell you a story. I'll share the PowerPoint.
Okay.
Here is it. We know, girls, that we study the history of America. We took everything from the, as we said previous time, from the Emancipation Proclamation, slavery Emancipation Proclamation and women's rights, and then we reached the 19 and now 1920th and 30th. We discussed before in Great Gatsby.
The jazz.
Yes, the 20th was called the Roaring 20th because people were wild, youth was wild, and it was the jazz era and this. What happened? What happened? Let's see. 1920s and 1930s, African American were no longer slaves. They were not slaves. They were African American. They were American citizens. They start to move to big cities. Before they were slaves living in farms to harvest the lands, to dig the miners, to household workers. They start to go to the cities. They establish a new social and cultural landscape. They start to establish build a new cultural landscape. They have their own music, they have their own food, they have their own clothes. So this time in New York during the 1920s and 1930s, it was before the Dust Bowl, okay? Before the Dust Bowl, before the stock market collapses. In 1920s and 1930s was known as the Harlem Renaissance. What is Harlem? Harlem is a province place in New York called Harlem. It is for black people, for African American. So they sat there and they lived there until now. They live there. At that time, a new black cultural identity was born in literature. The old literature book was full of novels were written by black African American at the times of 40s, 50s. It was the Renaissance. We can say a Renaissance is the glowing, numerous time period of literature or music, or literature, visual art, music, and they invented the blues and the jazz, blues and jazz. It was 20th and 30s. Okay, I'll show you this. Look at this. But I have to share it. This is, it is recommended from your book. This is the news. This is the news in 20th, a day in the 20th. Meet Henrietta Wood, the freed slave who successfully sued for slavery reparations. So this is the news at the 20th. Here, it's like a newspaper. You read a newspaper at the age of 20, at the 20th or 30th. Okay, so we go back to our PowerPoint here. Okay. So we said now that African Americans started to go to cities and live there. But although that this was a time for a racial pride, yani finally the black take advantages and they settle down in cities and they have rights, the movement had little impact on Jim Crow. What is Jim Crow? We will see. But there were here,
the movement of the black rights.
Yes, I am sure. Here is the slide, but I moved it without wait a minute. Here. Here, the author Zora Neale Hurston and poet Langston, they are African Americans. They were the nucleus as the core of this movement. Movement of what? What happened? This is it. There is something wrong. Here is it. What is Jim Crow? I don't get it. Who is Jim Crow? This is Jim Crow, and this is his fantasy characters. What? Not this is Jim Crow. What? Who is that? Well, let's see. Let's see the story. In 1877, and it's not written in your book. I brought it from outside because I want you to know it. In 1877, okay, after Civil War has finished, and Abraham Lincoln was killed. The newly inaugurated president, Rutherford B. Hayes, he was the president, removed the last armed troops from the former Confederate States of America. Remember the Confederates and the Union?
Yes.
This was against slavery, with the slavery and against slavery, they fought together, and then it was finished that there are no more slaves in America. So the war has finished, and since the end of war, military outposts had been placed throughout the South to distribute aid, maintain order, and ensure that residents adhered to the newly implemented Reconstruction Amendments. They want to get sure that people applied the newly implemented Reconstruction Amendment. Amendments is repairing the law, the Constitution. Like which amendments? Remember the 14th Amendment, the 13th Amendment. What was it about the 13th Amendment? 14th Amendment, which granted citizenship regardless of race. 13th Amendment abolished slavery. No more slavery. No more. Abolished slavery. 14th Amendment, citizenship regardless for race. So those slaves became African American. They became citizens. And 15th Amendment, which granted the ability to vote regardless of race. They can vote. So for 13, no more slavery. 14, they are citizens. 15, they can vote.
Mrs. 16 for women's rights, right?
I don't remember. I think it was in the 14th too, or 16th.
I don't know. I don't
16th.
Remember. Maybe
Yes, 16th
yeah.
Amendment.
Okay.
All southern states were required to ratify these 3 amendments before they could re-enter the United States. Any city that did not accomplish all these 3 amendments, they are not with the United States. So till they got sure that every city has adhered to the newly implemented.
But they are assessing basic rights of human rights, right?
Yes.
And everyone, they are the 13th Amendment and 14 through 15th. They are basic human rights.
Yes.
Right. So they must be in everywhere.
Yes. So now all southern states were required to ratify these 3 amendments before they could re-enter the United States. However, there were factions of the South that disagreed with these new amendments and the equality between black and white individuals. So there were people who didn't want to do it. As the Reconstruction era ended in 1877, an oversight listened. Many wanted to recreate the antebellum race relations between black and white individuals. They wanted the fight to stay. In order to recreate this social status, Jim Crow laws were established that limited African Americans' political and social rights in the southern states. This era of, so after they finished slavery, they started discrimination.
Yeah.
Okay. So they started the discrimination. Okay, so you are a citizen, but you will not sit with me on the same seat. not in the same cafe, not study in the same. So we finished the slavery, but we still are discriminated African Americans. So that's why they called it Jim Crow laws. From where came the word Jim Crow? And of course, the discrimination lasted till 1965, till Martin Luther King gave the presentation, the speech of I Have a Dream, and then Rosa Parks. And so they suffered after they finished slavery, after they got rid of slavery, they started discrimination. What is Jim Crow? Jim Crow is a really sad story. Jim Crow laws, they got their names from a character created and performed by the father of American minstrelsy, Thomas D. Rice. So this Thomas D. Rice, he's this man. In 1830s, it was before the Civil War, okay? 1830s. Rice claimed that Jim
The
Crow.
Civil War, Miss, when? When, Miss, was the Civil War?
It ended in 1877.
Okay.
So 1830 was before. Rice claimed that Jim Crow was modeled after a disabled black slave. Disabled black slave. He has disability. This black slave used to sing and dance as he worked, finding the singing and dancing comical. So he brought his cloth from slave in order to be realistic. This Thomas D. Rice, he brought this cloth from a slave in order to be realistic in his portrayal and adopted the folk song Jump Jim Crow. I will show it to you now. There was a folk song, Jump Jim Crow, and he called the character Jim Crow. You know, like Chaplin? Like Charlie Chaplin. Do you know Charlie Chaplin? Like Mr. Bean?
No. Oh, yes.
Yes.
You know Mr. Bean?
Yes.
Other girls, do you know Mr. Bean?
Yes, I
Yes.
do.
You know Charlie Chaplin?
Yes.
I've heard of him.
Yeah.
The black and white one.
Yeah, so Jim Crow is like him, a character, invented character, which commonly, and he used to sing Jump Jim Crow. He brought this, his name from Jump Jim Crow was commonly sung by slaves. Yani. Jump Jim Crow is a song that was sung by slaves. So he took the character Jim Crow and he named him Jim Crow and started to make sketches with this character. To appear African American, Rice burned the cork on his face. You know the cork that you, they polish the black shoes with it?
Yes.
Yeah, he used to rub his face with this cork. And the public loved Rice and his Jim Crow character from the 1830s to the 1850s. He traveled around the country performing in minstrel shows. These shows consisted of comedic sketches, as we can say, skits, songs, variety acts, and dancing, uncommonly perpetuating negative stereotypes of African Americans for entertainment. Okay, so I would like to show you, wait. I want to show you his show. I didn't share the voice. Let's share it again.
Jim Crow, sung by sheet music singer. Wheel about and turn. I come from old Kentucky a long time ago, where I first learned to wheel about and jump Jim Crow. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. I used to take him fiddle every morning afternoon, and charm the old buzzard and dance to the raccoon. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. I whip my weight in wildcats, I need an alligator, and tear up more ground and give her 50 load of tater. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. I sit upon a hornet's nest, I dance upon my head, I tie a viper round my neck, and then I goes to bed. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. I am for freedom and for union altogether, although I'm a black man, the white is called my brother. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. I'm for union to a gal, and this is a stubborn fact, but if I marry and don't like it, I'll nullify the act. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. I'm tired of being a single man, I'm determined to get a wife, for what I think the happiest is the sweet married life. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. It's very common among the white to marry and get divorced, but that I'll never do unless I'm really forced. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. Now my brother niggers, I do not think it right that you should laugh at them who happen to be white. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow. I'm so glad that I'm a nigger, and don't you wish you was too, for then you'd gain popularity by jumping Jim Crow. Wheel about and turn about and do just so. Every time I wheel about, I jump Jim Crow.
So, girls, this was a folk song used by the slaves while they worked. So he took this song and went to shows. Okay. Here.
As you may have heard, NBC Today host Megyn Kelly's show was canceled this past week following her on-air remarks expressing acceptance of blackface. It's a racist show business practice most of us thought was long gone. But as Maurice Dubois is about to tell us, blackface has a long history in our country. And we caution you, his report unavoidably includes many offensive and disturbing images.
It happens all too frequently, often at Halloween, but not exclusively.
They thought it was a joke, but it really just was not funny at all.
For example, 2 years ago in Maplewood, New Jersey.
Her daughter posted this photo of herself and a friend in blackface.
The two girls had no idea what blackface was or the history of it.
The history of blackface is long and complex and deeply ingrained in our culture.
Who was that lady I saw you with this afternoon? That was no lady. That was my wife.
Even Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd blacked up.
Ladies in this song, Fantastic, isn't it?
For more than 100 years, white and then black performers wore dark makeup and created not only a popular theatrical form, but stereotypes that are still with us today.
This makes you uncomfortable, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It does make me feel uncomfortable to talk about these things because they are incredibly disturbing and revolting.
Eric Lott, a professor at the Graduate Center of the City University of New York, says blackface represents a strange mix of envy, fascination, desire, and fear.
Explain the fear part to me. What are these white performers, what are these white people afraid of?
They're afraid of black groups, mobs, rising up and taking the power.
Minstrel shows began in the 1830s, and white performers used burnt cork or later black grease paint. Minstrelsy eventually became the most popular form of entertainment in the country.
Ah, yes.
I asked Margot Jefferson, the Pulitzer Prize-winning critic, to look at some images from the New York Public Library.
The shininess of the black against the big white clown's mouth, the hat, the overlong tailcoat, mocking. It always gives me the jolt that racist history does. Blackface is so tied to comedy, to people enjoying themselves, to people having fun, that rattles you still more.
Well, Mr. Tambo, you seem to be enjoying yourself this evening. Enjoying myself? I sure is.
White minstrel performers claim that what they did on stage was based on their perceptions of how black people lived.
Some of this came out of a genuine fascination with the music, the songs, the dances, the performance styles of black people.
But it's also where Jump Jim Crow was born, along with other characters depicted as lazy, lying, or buffoonish. Remember, this was all happening before the Civil War.
Slavery was all about creating visions, types, stereotypes of an entire race of people as subhuman in every way.
By the 1860s, African Americans began using blackface on stage.
Why on earth would a black performer put on blackface and demean him or herself?
Look, this is the 19th century. They had limited options. They were expected to.
Why?
Because it made the audiences comfortable. You can be fascinated, you can be excited, but you can always feel superior.
In effect, the black makeup on a black performer became a theatrical mask with many layers of meaning. Professor Eric Lott.
The mask, I think, says to white audiences, you have nothing to fear. Go ahead, enjoy yourself. To black audiences, I think any number of things might have been communicated, like, can you believe that these people are making me put on this mask so they will be entertained? In other words, it was a kind of winking to the black audience. But it gave black performers access to the stage.
One of the biggest black stars to come out of the minstrel tradition was Bert Williams, who wore blackface from vaudeville to Broadway.
It's clear that he was a genius of a performer.
But how did he reconcile performing in this demeaning art form?
He was very melancholy about it. He knew it was necessary for his career, as all other black performers knew it.
Minstrelsy on stage basically died out in the 1920s, but blackface lived on in the movies.
I'd walk a million miles for one of your smiles.
In 1927, Al Jolson starred in the pioneering talking picture The Jazz Singer, playing a young man who prefers singing popular music rather than his family's traditional Hebrew prayers.
When? But I know where the sunshine sets.
I don't want to look at it. What reaction do you get?
I totally understand.
Wait a minute. I don't like the way he said that.
In the Our Gang comedies of the 1930s, Spanky appeared in blackface.
Buckwheat, did you say Spanky was in a lot of trouble? Yes, sir.
The gag here is that the gang doesn't realize that Spanky in blackface until they actually see buckwheat.
Hiya, buckwheat.
So you understand, girls? You understand the idea of Jim Crow?
And miss, they were mocking the black people and the slavery.
Yes. At the time of slavery, he started this show. Okay, and then it lasted. That even black people, he was not so black. He has to rub himself with this black work to show that he is the black and with the white lips. Okay, stereotype of the African.
That's so wrong. Like they are literally making fun of their suffering.
Yes, they were making fun of stereotyping them and sarcastic them.
But they had to do it.
Yes, why?
Because it was the only way they could, gain access to privilege and have an audience.
Yes, for the blacks.
Yes,
why
for
they
black.
accepted. The question was why the black accepted to do this, and she said it was the 20th. They had no chance. They had no choice. Yes. Okay, we go back to our presentation. Did I share it? Okay, so here, girls, again we go back here. So this is the creator of Jim Crow, and as we said, Jim Crow was invented at the time before Civil War, and then it lasted. He used to take tours around the country to give shows and make fun of the African, black people. Then, okay, look. Let's stop here, girls, because we will start now reading, and we don't have time, right? It finishes now.
No, we have 3 minutes.
Okay, so we'll not start a new excerpt, because we will start reading Jazz by Toni Morrison. Next time, inshallah, we'll read it. Okay?
Okay.
Okay.
Did you enjoy the period? Serena?
Yes.
Yeah.
Serena? I was calling Serena because she said I don't enjoy literature period, so I just wanted to get sure if she enjoyed it today or not, but it seems like she's not here. Okay, girls, I hope you really enjoyed the period. I try my best to make it exciting.
Yeah, it's nice.
See you after tomorrow.
Yeah, bye.
Bye, ma'am.
Yes,
I want to tell you something.
Yes, please.
Can you stop recording?
Yeah.
Okay, so